we're in a similar location.
There's always a fair. There's more.
It's gotten better. You know?
I feel like normally those that it's the group against the street.
Well, I wonder.
That one. Yeah, I came along.
Yeah, he's in.
Well, if Jamie's driveway. We have no.
This is the one that has.
Yeah.
Okay, there's another.
But he said he was going to join by Zoom, but the security system.
Oh, we could.
That was. Yeah, we found.
Took me like, I'm glad I didn't need to be out there at the beginning of the city council meeting. It took me like 20 minutes. It's like first this computer, oh, that didn't work. Okay, let's try this. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like that's a problem. Because mine were crazy. Well, that explains. Like yours is. Mine, you see a little. That's a. It was not.
Yeah, so Chris.
But it's good to see that there are. So, yeah.
Well, I managed to get on, but I had to use the go to Zoom as a password. It takes probably at least 10-15 minutes.
But it's all, I shouted out.
Chris is in Cartagena, yeah.
Oh, so he will not be joining us.
Well, he was going to join us by Zoom. I don't see him.
We're talking about
That's
Cartagena, right?
yes.
Yeah, all right. I'm like, it's not. Is there a small community I don't know about it?
Recording in progress.
Yeah, that sounds warm.
Yeah. Sure, maybe it's nice.
But we have a quorum anyway, so. There were some problems with the city security certificate on the website last night. I don't know if anybody tried to.
Yeah, I didn't have any trouble.
No, you just went to the website and logged in?
Well, I went to the calendar and
Okay, yeah, and I couldn't access the city's website.
I was
Yeah.
driving, so
I couldn't get the calendar to open last.
Yeah, and that, it was,
like towards the end though. We're on for a while.
Yeah, I went in through a link that you sent. And then today I went in to try to just see if my iPad would bring it up, and I couldn't get the website to open at all today. I left a message, you'll get it. So,
shall we?
in a few days.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good evening and welcome to the Wednesday, March 15th Planning Commission meeting for the City of Trinidad. We are minus Commissioner Johnson, and of course Commissioner Slay is potentially going to be joining us, but we do have a quorum, so we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. The roll call, please.
Commissioner Cole,
Present.
Commissioner Hickman,
Present.
Commissioner Hopkins,
Present.
and as you mentioned, Commissioner Slay and Johnson were absent.
Okay, first on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the February 15th meeting. Are there any changes noted by any of the commissioners? And open it up to public comment if there is any. Don't see any. All right, looking for a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes as written.
I'd second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, passes unanimously. Next, approval of tonight's agenda. We just have the one item on it tonight, the drop relief project. Standard items after that. Changes? Motion to approve.
I move to approve the agenda as written.
I'd second that.
Chris. Right. Hey, welcome, Chris.
Thanks.
All right, Commissioner Slay has joined us. We approved the minutes from the last meeting, but if you had any changes, we could certainly hear about them. Otherwise, we're moving on to take a vote to approve the agenda for tonight.
I have no opposition to having approved the minutes and no comments on the agenda.
Okay. Got moved and seconded, right? So now we need to vote. Remember? Okay. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It's like it passes unanimously. This is the time when we open for items from the floor, items that are not appearing on the agenda. If there are any members of the public or commissioners that would like to add anything that's not on the agenda, now is your time. And it's going up. On to the first agenda item, public hearing, discussion, decision, and action on Trinidad Drought Relief Project, CEQA. And we'll turn it over to Trevor for a staff report.
Sure, thank you. So the city obtained some funding to do some upgrades to its water system to improve resiliency in times of drought and other issues. The project involves replacement of some water mains. Some are located in county jurisdiction on West Haven Drive and the access road to the water tanks. And then also Edward Street between Hector and Van Wyck. So that's in city limits. The project also involves replacing one of the existing 150-gallon redwood water tanks with a new 300,000-gallon steel tank with a chlorination system on it. There will be some improvements to the access road, possibly a retaining wall needed. Final designs haven't been completed, but are far enough along to complete CEQA. This project is somewhat been fast-tracked because they want to complete construction this summer. The CEQA document covers portions of the project both in city and county jurisdiction. So that's the California Environmental Quality Act. For those of you who might not have run across this before, so this analyzes a variety of resource topics and the impacts of the project on those environmental resource categories. And the intent is to analyze the project as a whole. So it includes all portions of the project. Just note the water tanks are in city limits. So it's a little island of city limits out there. The coastal development permit for the portions in the city's jurisdiction will come back to you probably next month at the April meeting. So we have some 30% design plans at this point. So we can move forward with the coastal development permit, and an application has already been submitted to the county for the work their jurisdiction as well. So I'm happy to take any comments and questions. It's a pretty minor project, but didn't fall under any of the CEQA exemptions. So an initial study was completed. The initial study found that with various mitigation measures, there's not going to be significant impacts. So city's proposing to adopt a mitigated negative declaration. There's a resolution in your packet for that. And then the city will file a notice of determination after that. There are a number of mitigation measures included with this project, but they're basically standard best practices, some pre-construction surveys, you have for nesting birds, rare plants, things like that. So they're not really anything that indicates a significant impact. And then, should rare plants or things like that be found during those surveys, there are some mitigation measures as well to deal with. And so for tonight's decision, you should be focusing on the environmental document, the environmental impacts, as opposed to the project itself, which will come back to you.
See that one's on there, K-State.
Yeah, and so there's a couple of folks from GHD. So Andrea's been working on the permanent environmental document. And Steve Allen is also there, and so those are the folks that have been working on this project and know more about it than I do. So they're here to answer.
Okay. Any starting questions from the commissioners, clarifications? I mean, after reading it through, I'd say it seems pretty straightforward. I don't have any bones to pick or concerns regarding the SQL analysis. I do have questions regarding the project, but as Trevor noted, we'll save those for next month. My opinion, the potential environmental impacts are pretty minimal. Sir.
I appreciated that if something does come up, it seemed like there was fallback problem, just even all that. Appreciate the effort. It looks good.
Chris, please go ahead.
I've got some questions, maybe rooted in naivete.
Do you hang on one second, Chris? Anton is it? Yeah. I'm going to try and get your volume up louder in the room here on our speaker.
Just let me know when to go ahead.
But give it a whirl now.
All right, how's that?
Perfect.
Okay, great. So I was saying that I've got a couple of questions that I think are rooted in my own naivete, and they're related to some of the mitigation efforts. And I ask this because, I've got a PhD in biology, and yet I'm really, truly terrible at identifying, various plants and birds. And so I'm wondering about these pre-construction worker trainings and whether there's associated materials or like instructional. Are there like standard instructional steps that ensure that construction workers are fully up to date with regard to identification of those potentially, endangered plant species and nesting bird species and so on and so forth?
I can speak to that if that's okay, Trevor and staff.
Please.
Yeah. So, hi, Chris. I'm Andrea Hilton. I work for GHD and was one of the team members that put together the CEQA document for you. Typically, the worker awareness training, it's on site with the crew day one before they start. There's a brochure. There's definitely some materials, and it's reviewing. In this case, what a red-legged frog looks like, and there's a picture or potential, cultural resources. Sometimes there's a cultural resource component as well, like what you might potentially find and what you should do if you find something. So it's pretty basic information because we will do the pre-construction surveys, which is minimally required, but in all practicality, just because you look for the frog the week before construction doesn't mean that the frog doesn't happen to hop by like the day after you start, right? Murphy's Law. So the point is to be able to let the people that are actually going to be on the ground day to day have a sense of awareness and a protocol and sense of when a biologist does need to be called or doesn't need to be called, and to just kind of best practices to look out for those species and resources that could be encountered day to day. Lately, I will say in this digital environment, we've actually started doing them virtually and recording the call, the Teams call or the Zoom call. And that way, if crew, sometimes not every employee is present on day one at the construction site. And so then there's a recording available. So the person that shows up the next week could still have the opportunity to watch the hour, recording and have access to the information, even though they weren't present on day one. So and some context. It's not perfect, but it's just trying to go that extra little bit to make sure everybody has their eye out for special things that can be rescued in the event they're encountered to reduce those impacts to those species.
Got it. Thanks. And so, like, if someone noted a population of harlequin lotus, for example, in the area, there'd be somebody on the ground to show the construction workers where that population was and to regulate it.
For plants, we'll do the early and late season protocol surveys and would ideally have identified those beforehand and protected them with exclusion fencing and, gone through a formal process to either avoid or mitigate for any, special status botanical species. That said, sometimes resources get missed, even really seasoned biologists, for example, will miss a bird nest. And if we're made aware of one, we're happy to come verify and then, take it from there. But with the special status plants, especially with the 2 seasonal surveys, we do our absolute best to try to be able to document and avoid them entirely well in advance of construction.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else from the commissioners? Open it up for public comment, although I'm not sure we have any public with us. Everybody on Zoom's accounted for. Do we want to go through the documents page by page as convention? I think it's kind of a lengthy document. If there's things anybody's found they want to bring out, I thought that might be a better approach tonight than to go through 100 and something pages of this document. So maybe we could just go commissioner by commissioner. Does that work?
That works.
Okay. Kristen?
I don't have anything that I want to question or got specific.
Yeah. Tom?
Mine was more on the construction, and that's going to be next month. So,
Chris, anything that you found?
I have nothing beyond what I just asked a moment ago.
All right, I just had a couple super minor things. On page 3, under the product description, just a typo, Van Wyck, in the detailed section is not spelled with the C all the way through, just something to get police stuff. And then I did have one other question under the mitigation. We are in page 44 of the actual document package, page 72. 5.10a, and I guess this is a question for GHD folks. Talks about violating water quality standards. It's marked as less than significant. The paragraph that begins construction, it ends with this impact is considered to be potentially significant. And I guess I'm just wanting to understand how that's flagged as less than significant impact, but then is considered to be potentially significant. I just want to understand that better.
I can speak to that if that's okay, Trevor.
Yes, please.
Yeah, and you'll see that CEQA speak in other impact areas as well. It's pretty common that we identify potential risk and then discuss how we mitigate it. In this sense, correct, if we did nothing, if you just built the project without any consideration, for water quality or erosion control, there is a potentially significant impact. But because this project later on in the second to the last paragraph references Environmental Protection Action 1, which is the requirement for stormwater protection stormwater pollution prevention plan. Sorry, had a moment. And bio mitigation measures 4 and 6, which protect wetlands and reduce water quality impacts as well. Because we're doing these other things, that potentially significant impact is reduced to a less than significant impact. We kind of just start the narrative with worst case and then explain our way why the worst case will not occur.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. One last pass for public comment. All right, back to the commissioners. Any other questions that have popped up? This document? If not, then I guess we are at the point where we can entertain a motion for the resolution in our packet. 23-1. Procedural question for if we move to go forward, is it enough to just move to go forward with this resolution 2023-1, or do we need to read the whole thing out?
No, you can make a motion and to adopt it without.
All right.
I move to adopt the resolution 2023-01 as written.
I second that.
If we could do a roll call vote.
Commissioner Cole,
Aye.
Commissioner Hickman,
Aye.
Commissioner Hopkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Slay.
Aye.
Carries unanimously with the absence of Commissioner Johnson. All right, moving on then to commissioner reports. Any commissioners have anything to report?
I spoke to Diane today. She's doing fine. She's happy to not be there.
It's no.
The Trails Committee did not meet, is that correct?
We've been having their problems and for sure in the future.
Yeah, they're meeting in April, the 3rd,
Yes.
Tuesday. Gotcha.
Yes.
Chris, anything? I have nothing, and we'll move on to staff report. Trevor?
Don't think I have anything new to report. I've been working on looking at highlands and water use data over time and presenting you some options for, looking at water use, regulating water use, permitting water use or not. So it's kind of interesting. There's a number of cases where an individual's water use has increased significantly over time. Sometimes it's a leak. There's one we're working on right now where it's a problem. Their plumbing is just problematic. So every time they fix a leak, they find another one. But overall, water use has gone down. So I'll be bringing that back to you and looking at some other things that other communities do, allocation programs. So I'll be bringing that in April, as well as likely the CDP to this pipeline project will be back in April. Other than that, none of sort of my pending or expected permit applications are moving forward yet. So other than that, I'm just, continuing to work on SB2 and LEAP grant tasks. Ordinance to the council last night, and so I'm going to be working on preparing some zoning ordinance amendments for the first reading of the council and getting kind of packaged up in a way to give to the Coastal Commission and the commission.
Oh, when you said water usage has gone down, is that per capita or just in general?
Both. I mean, the city's population has fluctuated some, I guess a fairly high percent between 300 and 350 in the last 20, 30 years. So looking at water use individually over the last 10 years, I've got about 10 years of data, and then also just the compiling of all water sold over the last 1,000, so over 20 years. So it's both.
All right, moving on to future agenda items. Any changes anybody wants to see there? I got just a general question, since we are kind of in a lull right now a little bit, is it worthwhile considering pulling a couple of these?
No, because in my world, it's not a lull because I've got all these SB2 grant tasks. Plus, I'm trying to get Jennifer the OWTS apparently like a
Yes,
PhD.
I'm with that.
Yeah, so no, and then also we've got the erosion and trail issue that we had a site visit down there. I guess there's another thing to report today. Tentative meeting with the tri management team next week. So looking for some solutions on that, both short and long term. So I have my plate. But some of these things, we are working on some of these other tasks. So hopefully we're getting to them to a degree.
Anything else from anybody? Yes, Chris.
Yeah, so during our last meeting with the Trinidad Unified School District Superintendent, we talked a little bit about the land use of the playground and a general lack of park lands in the city. And there was some mention of ongoing discussion, and I was wondering, are those types of discussions best initiated at the council level? If we're trying to discuss how open space and recreational spaces might be better utilized.
I think it could be either. I mean, the planning commission, as part of the general plan update, there is a conservation and open space element of the general plan. So the planning commission is not actively working on that at this time, but certainly that might be something you want to look through, might be helpful. The city also has some park bond funding that we're working on spending this year. One of the projects is to create a small memorial park at the top of the Galindo Trail as part of the proposed closure of that trail. But yeah, certainly the city council might be interested in hearing any ideas or concerns that you have as well.
Got it. Thanks.
All right. Anything else? Then I guess we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Probably one of the shortest ever, yes.